And we're live here in Nourish, Heal, and Thrive. This is really exciting. We have Kaye, and she's a shaman and a leadership coach, and we're going to hear all about it. So, Kaye, thank you for doing this. I know it's early in the morning for you, but I really appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek. It's not too bad. It's 8:30 and I do
Okay.
start earlier, but there are things that I need to get done. But it's lovely to have been invited here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So, why don't you start just by sharing a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure. Well, all my life, Derek, I've had this inner voice of knowing that's been really loud. It's not, I don't like to call it an intuition because I'm incredibly sensitive to energy. I've known energy all of my life. As a child, it was just how I was. I didn't sort of, we don't comprehend, oh, I'm working with energy, I'm moving energy, I'm dancing with energy, do you know what I mean? We're just
Yeah,
true to who and how we are. So the
sure.
understanding of how I was as a child came later. But if I use the word intuition, it feels ethereal. And people always talk about intuition like, oh, it's a little whisper. I know from personal experience and working with others for over 35 years now that it is an inner voice of knowing. It has three components to it: knowing, power, and potential, which is the voice of source, soul, and successful self. The successful self that says, hey, Derek, join Bump and create this group and whatever it might be. It might be, hey, join the gym. It might be write a book, start a podcast, but it whispers, that's the whisper. That's that aspiration that comes. And so if you think of the inner voice of knowing as, the knowing, power, and potential, source, soul, and successful self, why wouldn't we listen to that? And as a child, I had that all my life and it never dimmed. It was like a psychologist, it was like a friend. It was, when I would approach my mother, for example, I'm very much the communicator and it's how I process. But if my mother couldn't respond, that voice would educate me about what was happening with her, what was in her subconscious, why she couldn't respond, why she was responding that way. So it educated and guided me every step of the way. And as I had my awakening experiences, and I say experiences because there can be some that are really significant, Derek, which I've had, and then there are others that are all part of that puzzle. And we're always awakening deeper and deeper and deeper to who and how we are, right? It's
Yeah.
forever expansive. I started to watch, and you've got to remember, I was in my 20s when I started, and I'm now 60. So, the spiritual community was very different, but also the same. It has evolved and grown. But I was seeking mentors and to be part of a community as I recognized, who I was and what was happening and how I'd always been. And I experienced a lot of bullying and I watched a lot of ego. Those that were mentoring were threatened by me, even though I was only in my 20s and like, hey, I'm looking for some guidance. And then I watched those that were their audience elevate them and they were allowing themselves to be elevated. And I watched this energetic dance and I felt it because the knowing is a whole bodied experience, right? So I
Yeah.
see it, feel it, sense it. Um, it's my natural world. And it struck up this absolute drive and passion within me as I explored different worlds and different realms and down into the depths of darkness and back again. I call it, the underworld and navigating back, and the mind, the terrain, and the landscape and the language of the mind and the emotions and all the rest of it, and how it guides us back to that inner voice of knowing. It dials us back into it, and it's loud for everybody. And there is no greater authority within your life than that inner voice of knowing, soul, source, and successful self. So that's sort of become my life's mission, my drive. So no one's elevated above another. We all have it. We're all more magnificent and powerful and capable beyond what we currently, believe with our subconscious false stories and beliefs.
Yeah.
And You know, when I was 5, I knew I'd chosen to be here. My mother would tuck me into bed. We'd do the Lord's Prayer. We were Church of England, bless everyone and the family and the dog. And I'd lay there and I'd say, God, I know I chose to be here, but it's hard. Please take me home, and I know I have to be back in the morning. And again, when you're 5, that's just natural. You don't question it. You don't analyze it. You don't compartmentalize it. It was just a natural way of being for me. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was told that I'm shaman. And that horrified me. I was terrified of it. I didn't want it. I pushed back on it. It just felt like this responsibility, which is quite normal when you're told that you're a shaman, unless you understand it from birth, if you're born into a tribe or a family that know and bring you up that way. Until I was meditating one day and I had what I just thought was sort of a vision, a story. And it was me as a 4-year-old on the hip of a Maori woman dressed in all her traditional clothing. And she was talking to me very quietly about me and about my deep connection to the earth, and how even as the earth goes through changes, I will feel it in my body, my connection to everything, everyone, my gifts, my sensitivities, the journey that I would go through to learn how to work with the energy so it didn't impact me. And yeah, this whole story was told to me, and her last words were from the meditation, you know, one day you will remember this. And my mother, who was living in a different state at the time, excuse me, sent me a photo album. She said, Casey, because that's what I was called as a kid, I've just put a few photographs together for you, and I've sent it to you. And I open it up and there's a photo of me as a 4-year-old on the hip of this Maori woman, because I'd spent the first 4 years of my life in Papua New Guinea. And on our trip back to Melbourne, which is where I grew up, my father took us to a lot of different countries, and one of them was New Zealand. And from that moment on, I felt the greatest comfort I'd ever known, the greatest acceptance of myself, of who and how I was as a child, why I felt like I didn't fit in, you know, why I felt like I didn't want to be here at times, why I felt more comfortable as a child every time I explored, you know, like I was always exploring the concept of God and other beings and other religions, and I was open to it all and questioning all the time. So, you know, when we surrender to the deepest truth of who and how we are, it's a homecoming, Derek, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I've been more consciously on this path, accepting who and how I am, and my gifts and my abilities, and that my path has been very different because everything that I know on how to do and work with the energy, and everything that I see within others and how I work, I've been trained, you could say, one, from just born knowing, and secondly, a life of initiation through direct experience.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a story. I was
Yeah.
I was wondering, you said that you had a moment like when you were traveling through New Zealand, I think it was New Zealand into Melbourne. That's when you kind of had an awareness of,
No, I didn't remember. I can't remember my childhood. I can remember it more from about 5 onwards.
oh, I see.
So that memory was in a meditation.
Oh,
I think
oh,
I
I
must have
see.
been doing sort of a deep prayer of why do you keep telling me that I'm a shaman? You know, I don't
Okay,
want this burden of responsibility. Help me understand, which
right.
I now understand to be those power questions, which really are an invocation,
Yeah.
which an invocation is an invitation. And the minute you call source in, source responds. And then that's when I had that vision, which was confirmed by my mother sending me this photo album. And there's the photo, and I ring her up
Ah,
going, hey, what's this? And that's when she said, well, of course, you know, when we were coming back home from New Guinea, you know, we went to many countries. And I didn't tell her then, oh, I've been told I'm a shaman, mum, you know.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was just, it just sank and took root in me. Like, I can't fight this. You know, those surrender moments that people talk about.
Yeah.
In surrendering, you can't hold on to even a thread. there, otherwise you haven't surrendered. It was like a falling more deeply into myself and a deep level of acceptance. And like I said, I just started to make sense. Because you can imagine hearing other people's thoughts, knowing what's going on in their subconscious, as a child, feeling their pain. So I would have termed myself an extreme sensitive, or what people call empath. And I'm here to say, empaths, stop living like you're a victim and you can't be here and you can't be there. You can, you've just got to learn to work with your energy. So when I work with energy now, I can say, if I'm doing the healing work or even coaching, I can go, okay, allow me to feel it, or allow me to view it as though I'm just looking through the window, if that makes sense. But if I allow myself to feel it, which I do in the healing work, or when I'm running big group work, then I disconnect afterwards, because I don't need to be left with it. I just need to feel it. Where are they feeling it in their body? What's happening? Where's it come from? And then release myself from it, if that makes sense.
So it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. So what about the people that, I mean, for me growing up, I feel like now I have this sense of knowing, right?
Yeah.
But growing up, I might have had it, but I was kind of taught not to listen to it or to ignore it.
Yeah.
So what should
To
we do?
suppress it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happens for so many. And I just feel my purpose was to have had that knowing. Like, I said something once, and I thanked the divine. I'd worked with a large group of people, and I thanked the divine because they go through just such massive transformation. And people, when they work with me, they can understand a part of me, and the other part is just like, I don't understand, Kaye, and I know it's hard for you to explain. I don't care. I've just changed. So I feel that, and when I said to God, oh, thank you so much, for your gifts and allowing me to be a vessel. And it was like, no, Kaye, this is from years, soul years and experience of having these gifts. And the purpose was to come out and be a truth seeker and a truth speaker and guide people. So I wasn't meant to lose mine or have it dulled down. It always came through. But again, it was guiding me. So it stopped me from doing what a lot of my friends did when they played with some hard drugs. That voice would be like, Kaye, if you do this, you will no longer be on the path and the purpose that you came here for, because you are highly addictive, because you are highly sensitive. And that voice would be so loud, it would stop me from doing things that I may. Didn't stop me from everything, you know. I was drinking lots
Yeah.
and trying to suppress and trying to fit in and all the rest of it. But we're not told as children. And if, we're supposed to forget, there is this, like, I came through with a knowing, but also not knowing, right? Because I also
Mhm.
just felt myself as this kid that didn't belong. Can't we all be friends? As, girls would be very cruel and, three don't work, three friends together don't work. And I could never understand it. But the journey is, we're the soul who's all knowing. And we put our hand up and it's like, please, can I come down and can you participate by being nasty to me, or can you bully me, or, and can you love me, and all these dynamics. But we come in and there is a forgetfulness, right? Like, I didn't remember as a child consciously I was a soul who chose to be here. I just knew I'd chosen to be here. And again, as a young child, we don't break things up and analyze them. And then the purpose is to learn to turn our vision back inwards and remember that's the exciting part for the soul aspect of us.
Mhm.
And of course, we're not raised in this tribally connected, consciously aware that we are connected to nature and each other and all things, right? So we need people like myself, perhaps, that have, that have that knowing to guide you back from direct experience, because I see that, I know that. I'm not in this for myself. I'm in this for this purpose of what I came for. There's no greater excitement than awakening someone. But, when my eldest daughter was little and I was doing my exploration, I was having this awakening. I didn't speak about it to my children while they were little. I was like, okay, I need to experience this. What's truth? What's not? Right? But I would have large groups of people come into the house, um, and my daughter would be asleep at the age of 2, and then she'd wake up and I'd hear her talking, and I'd knock on the door and go, "Hey, sweetheart, you're supposed to be asleep. What's happening?" "Well, mummy, when all your friends came in, all their friends came in to me." And I'm like, okay, well, you need to tell them to leave because you've got to sleep. But most parents would go, "Oh, make believe friends,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're over time, and no judgment on anybody, because what you're not aware of, you can't
Mm.
understand, right? And isn't it exciting? And that voice of knowing is always there. It's like we're just dialing out of it, right? We're like tuning into a radio. You've
Yeah.
got to tune into it. And if we miss the mark, then it's not as clear, right?
Yeah.
So all
Right.
these beliefs, all this forgetfulness, all this external, um, all these false stories and beliefs and perceptions that we take on, that we also come through because we're like, I need to choose this experience and I need to choose this experience, just like I chose bullying through most of my life, right? Until I could really deeply understand it. In fact, I ended up in a situation where I downscaled my business in my 40s, guided again by this knowing, re entered the workforce before I looked too old. And I fast tracked
Mm.
myself in careers, and I consciously crafted and created elements that I needed. Like, I don't want to do weekend work anymore. I need a car. I need a fuel card. I need this much wage, right? And I grew rapidly in that. But the one thing that followed me was severe bullying. And it was such a shock because
Mm.
I'd spent 20 years where people sought me out to work with me, right? And these people, the egos, because I ended up in sales and team building and management and sort of coaching in all of that. But bullying followed me from teams, from management, and even in upper management. And I needed that experience so that I could actually recognize that I'd had bullying all my life, but it had become so familiar. I didn't recognize it unless it was absolutely amplified.
Ah.
So, there's forgetfulness within us all. I just always had that voice. Um, and I didn't try to make sense of it until one day it made sense. But the majority, like, I'm sure I've had so many lifetimes where I've had complete forgetfulness, not had that inner voice, had it drowned out of me. But that's not my purpose this lifetime. Um, but there's no greater joy for me than helping people understand the terrain they're traveling through, the purpose of it all. That's why I say, understanding the landscape of the mind and the emotions and the physical and the energetic, therefore the spiritual, but also understanding the language, because everything's talking to us, even our fears, even our doubts, even our insecurities, all of that. And I call them false stories and beliefs because we need to call them out for what they are, not
Mm.
feed them by calling them a subconscious belief, which instills it has power over us.
Ah, that's interesting.
I know I'm talking a lot, Derek, but what happens is it's like whatever people need to hear in this time that we have
Yeah,
just
this is,
flows.
I needed to hear this for sure. I really appreciate your perspective on this because a lot of healers, including myself, we talk about the subconscious belief and how we need to change this and that. And we're giving our subconscious more power by doing that.
Yes. So, and because I've been taught, for lack of a better word, directly and from memory and from that inner voice of knowing, I will have different language and different ways of framing things because it's through, again, my direct teaching and direct experience. And I feel the energy. So, the same as when I say intuition, that feels ethereal. It feels, everything needs to feel grounded, even in the unseen world,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, when I go my inner voice of knowing, power and potential, source, soul, successful self, that's a stake in the ground, right? That anchors that energy. Why wouldn't I follow that? and no one knows your path greater than your soul, do they? Not
Yeah.
not everyone else that's trying to teach us to do this and do that, or when everyone's saying, oh, my subconscious beliefs, there's an energy of, oh, I'm a victim to it. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Every experience is designed for us. But then when we reframe and bring awareness to something, so when we're not consciously aware, we can't really take responsibility. There's something else driving us, and we're in the passenger seat, the back seat, or some clients have been in the boot, right?
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking. But as we start to turn that vision inwards and also reframe and use language that has energy contained within it that works for us, like false story and belief. So I don't feel worthy. That's a false story and belief. I don't have what it takes. That's a false story and belief. And we don't blame anybody, right? We false story belief, I've already called it out, which means it's in my awareness, which means when something's in your awareness, you actually have that conscious awareness to choose. And you've already made a choice when you go, it's a false story and belief, right? Sort of distances you from it, going, well, then a dear friend that I interviewed once said, I call out bullshit on myself, right?
Yeah.
And I do that by going, Kaye's teachings, it's a false story and belief. So I call bullshit on that, which means I've created a space to choose. It's not in my driver's seat. Like an annoying friend, I'm going to put it next to me. And the more I keep taking action and calling it out as a false story, it slowly quietens. Right? I'm not
Mhm.
trying to get rid of anything. I'm just choosing in the now moment while something is talking to me in the now moment. I don't have to go back to the past. The past is here. The future is here. That's why we live in the present, and we choose to bring awareness to something. Energy has power. What power am I putting into it? What words am I associating with it that actually gives me power and authority to be the leader within my own life?
Wow. Wow. Okay, I think I can listen to you for hours. It's been amazing. So tell us a little bit more about what you do, your practice, what kind of clients come to you, and what kind of outcomes they receive.
Yeah, I generally now focus working with women. In the healing work, I work with men as well, but in the coaching, I like to focus on women. Although, if a man put his hand up and said, "Kay, I am drawn to working with you," I would. I've worked with men in the past. This has just been the calling. So, yeah, if you're in Perth, Western Australia, you can come and actually have a healing session with me, but I can also do it through distance because there is no distance with energy. I have my coaching programs all designed to get the individual back into their driver's seat of their life, really by working with the unseen while we're setting up the scene of their life. So all the energetics that stop us, we might say, I want to get past my comfort zone and this is my calling, but there are energetic containers and stances that we have and patterns that hold us firm where we are. So I work a lot with entrepreneurs and people that want to be leaders within their professional life, but also within their personal life, because you can't separate it. Um, if you live here, I do ceremonies and the rest of it. I have a podcast called Inner Voice of Knowing. So one podcast, it's just me. The next one is an amazing guest or guests. There's a movie documentary that I was part of that's just come out called The Gift in Adversity with 24 global thought leaders alongside Jack Canfield, Michael Beckwith, and Dr. John Demartini and other amazing people. That's on my website. So everything I do is designed to invoke that change, that understanding, and get people back into the driver's seat of their life very consciously, understanding the landscape, understanding how everything's talking to us, so understanding the language, so they can lead themselves through their life and create the success, whatever success is to them, but becoming consciously crafters and creators, not manifestors. You've been manifesting all your life, consciously crafting and creating from the inside out.
Love that. Love that. So we're going to have you leave your links in the comments of this post so people that resonate with you can contact you and find out more about your coaching and your ceremonies and your podcast. So, but I really want to thank you for doing this today. This was really great. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure we talk about?
Oh, look, we could we could talk for a very long time.
Yeah.
You know, I always say to people, listen back to these conversations because sometimes we miss, we grasp one thing and we miss something else. So whenever you're listening to someone you feel really, inspired or connected, listen a couple of times, really let it land. But the thing of, the power of change is in your hands, which is what I say, and it is. People like me, healer, coach, whatever you want to call it, they're all just titles. At the end of the day, I'm just a guide who knows the terrain from experience. I live and walk and write everything that I speak about, um, because that would be out of integrity for me if I didn't. And the thing is, you really are more magnificent and have so much more power within you. So if you look at someone else and think, wow, then go to the mirror and look into yourself and say, wow.
I love that. Love that. Thank you so much for doing this. Really amazing. I'm definitely going to
Thank you.
re-listen to this because I know there's something I missed that I need to probably hear. So really appreciate what you've said today. So if if you're listening and you're watching and you connect with Kaye and you resonate with her and you want to learn more, check out her links. And thanks for thanks again. And if you like what we're doing here, Nourish, Heal, and Thrive, comment interview and we'll spotlight you and we'll share your gifts, share your story, or even if you're struggling, we'll give you the support you need. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.